Hey there, Jim. How's it going? What fixed it? Oh, just some like setting like deep in like the options. All right. And now it works just like you were, just like it was working before. It like cool. I'm so glad. I mean, that's the worst sort of computer problem. Is you're like I changed something. I have no idea what. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, because that workaround was while it worked, it was a pain in the butt. Hmm. Yeah, because you can't use VLOOKUP to look up from another file. That's actually, I'm going to be, uh, as we get into it today, I'm going to be taking some notes about things like that from everybody, so I can sort of in between classes. Hmm. For sure. Right. Okay. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I don't have an immediate thing, but yeah, I'm going to be taking notes. Uh, well, here before you do it, so because I don't think that fourth person is gonna show up quick. Let's get into some general stuff, and then we'll dive into that. Yeah, absolutely. Um, but yeah, howdy y'all, howdy again. Um, thanks for joining me again for 4 more weeks of Excel stuff. Um, especially since all of you took my first class, we all have sort of a shared foundation, a shared vocab about everything we talked about in Excel 1, which is fantastic because the way when I envisioned this Excel 2 class, the way I wanted to run it is almost kind of like a workshop type of class, right? Where now that we have all of the foundational stuff and the common language of Excel, let's actually look at accomplishing real world tasks with it, right? We can do all sorts of examples and use dummy data and stuff like that, but each one of you needs to use Excel in the real world. I'm assuming it does it based on talking to you and messages you sent me last in the last class. It doesn't seem like any of you are in this for the theory of Excel, uh, and as a hobbyist thing, you actually need to accomplish real tasks. Um, and so, as we get on here to day one, my the way I sort of envision this class going, um, I'm gonna I'm hoping to sort of engage in some discussion about like what do we use Excel for, what can we accomplish, what are things that are just sort of outside the possibilities of Excel, um, of which there isn't a ton. You can do a bunch of stuff in Excel. Um, and then sort of looking at various strategies to accomplish those real world tasks, and to get the real world sort of end result behavior that you're looking for. Um, and then as we talk about that, I will lead us through some tutorials and things like that, where I will likely be pulling in dummy data and things like that, but so we can see, okay, how do I get Excel to, like Jim was just talking about, how do I pull data from uh, a single Excel file into other files and keep it connected live? Uh, that that is a real world need. That's actually something I do with my Google Sheets stuff, and so yeah, I'll Jim, I'll help you sort of look into that. That'll probably be a thing I won't be able to answer until next week, because in between now and then I'll write that down and I'll sort of look at various ways to accomplish that task. Um, so yeah, that's sort of my vision for this. With my hope being in terms of outcomes for you all, um, in 4 weeks, uh, you will have deepened your knowledge about Excel, and in particular, learned how to do the very particular tasks that you need in Excel. And by observing us talking about other people's things, sort of gained a bit of a overview of the vast possibilities of what Excel could accomplish for you. Um, there there just is no, I mean, I was going to say there is no like mastery of Excel type of thing, but that's not true. Microsoft has people, they train people that are like, that know absolutely every function of Excel and every sort of option, stuff like that, simply because they use it and they teach it all the time. For the vast majority of us, um, it's sufficient to have a knowledge of the general things that Excel can accomplish, what the vocab is, so that we can Google things. Just like I talked about in the last class, the most important skill is uh, being able to successfully Google how you do something and follow along with that. Because Excel is just so open ended, there's no way we could ever cover every possible thing you can do with it. Um, so that said, I would like to sort of dive in. Jim, you already got us started on some of this. Oops, wrong screen there. Um, so you need to pull data from one uh, file into others, um, and this needs to be a live connection, right? Like if you update that the client list at any point, you need it to update all of the other spreadsheets. Does that sort of describe what you're getting after? Um, nice. Yeah, that is um, being able to do that then opens up a whole bunch of power. Clearly, you have a particular use case in mind for that. Um, um, so here I'm going to make, and basically this is just being, this is the start of my notes for what we're actually going to cover and be able to talk about in this class. So uh, access a client list from multiple um, sheets. Um, cool. Um, what? Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of the. There we go. Kinda. I I was hoping. So this is the back end of my website. Um, oh, nice, Jim. I see that. Um, nice. Um, you're sort of seeing the back end of my website here. I was hoping I could take notes on the actual site itself, but it's not working quite as well as I wanted to. Anyway, um, So that's the thing Jim needs to accomplish in Excel. What about Taylor or Diana? Is there a particular task that you are sort of after um, accomplishing uh, in Excel specifically? Pivot tables, perfect. Um, do you, uh, in sort of a general way, or do you? Is there something that like pivot tables can do for you that you just, yeah, that you're looking for? Mm-hmm. Oh, so yeah, you just need to know how they work, right? Like yeah. Um, sure. Yeah. Uh, Absolutely. I know what you're talking about there. Um, Excellent. Okay. Um, so yeah, pivot tables, nuts and bolts. You also mentioned along with that, so I will just throw it in here. Um, Merge and center, things like that. That last one is actually is a single button. So we'll talk about that. Um, um, Taylor, any particular outcome, like any particular Excel task you are, building towards or know that you're going to need? Actually, I might be asking you, and you might not have a mic connected, I'm realizing, and I would feel really bad. I thought I noticed somebody didn't have a mic connected. Where's my button? Um, all right. Taylor, absolutely feel free to use chat. Um, I'll sort of give a second for you there. Um, so those are tasks. My assumption is that as we continue to move on through these couple of weeks, uh, even more, specific tasks will probably emerge, especially as we talk about things that will likely spur ideas. Um, ooh, Taylor says editing pivot tables. Okay, cool. So we'll making sure we can editing pivot tables. Boom. Um, but yeah, as we talk about things, likely other ideas will pop up and other needs. Um, okay. Um, what about? Are there anything right now that's feeling overwhelming or confusing about Excel? Possibly pivot tables. Perfect. Yeah, yeah. Overwhelming or confusing. Those are the things we want to hopefully over the course of these couple of weeks. I mean, yeah, I feel very strongly that at the end of these 4 weeks, you can feel very comfortable with pivot tables. Um, and again, this isn't the only opportunity to talk about these things. This is me sort of broaching this conversation um, and opening the table to us sort of, this is the thing that I'm struggling with, that sort of stuff. Um, what about anything? One of my favorite things about Excel is automating tasks. That's where I love to exist with Excel. Are there any tasks that you all do by hand? I mean, maybe it's in Excel, uh, but are there a type of thing that you wonder if it could be automated, even if you don't know if it could be automated? All right. We'll sort of leave that as an open question, and that's totally fine. And again, as these things come up, feel free to email me in between our class sessions if something pops into your head, or write it down, and we can bring it up at the beginning of next week or a subsequent week's meeting. Um, I want to. Um, Jim, I clicked into those jam files, but it says I needed to request access. Can you turn on just general access? And I'll. Um, to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure. I have very rarely used Jamboard. Um, so it wasn't working anyway. Okay. Um, honestly, if uh, it should hopefully work into like into an email or something. That might be the most straightforward way. Um, yeah. Um, so I will say right off the bat, I know how to do this. I do this a fair bit in Google Sheets, but I will need to look more closely into how to accomplish this in Excel, especially because I'm dealing with the dichotomy of the web version of Excel versus the desktop version. I'm trying to get the desktop version running for myself. I'm running Linux, and so it's just there's a whole bunch of extra steps I have to go through to get the desktop version running. But I hope to have the desktop version running by the time we meet next week. Um, so for right now, it looks like pivot tables are uh, a couple of us need those. It would honestly they're super useful for analyzing data. Here, let me update this, and we'll just switch back over. Um, yeah, so let's um, if you want to follow along, here's what I'll do. Give me one. Actually, give me one sec. Let me find where I put um, that file. I figured we were going to want to talk about pivot tables, and so yeah, I have some stuff that will help us focus on that. But apparently I closed. Okay, I closed that tab. Give me one sec, and I'll get it open again. Uh, Drive. Aha, here we go. Um, while I'm waiting for this to pull up, just a quick overview. Um, the website for Excel 2 is going to be organized exactly the same as our Excel 1. We'll have these will right here will generally be some notes that I sort of form day of, just like I'm doing here. The formatting here is wonky. I will fix that. Um, and then I'll post any files that I use in both their beginning and end states, just like I did last time. And this is where I'll post the video of this class recording that's going on right now. I'll probably, especially for this class, I will probably also post additional videos that aren't me, just things I found online that I thought were useful and helpful. Um, there's lots of people out there that have way better production quality than I am capable of, who have made some really great Excel tutorials. Um, all right, here is our. All right, if you would like to follow along, um, I am pasting a link in the chat just now um, that you can to a file, the sample file that you can download, which is the sample file that I will be using right now. So I'm gonna go over here and click on Excel, close, and get my Excel going. Wow, it is tired today. There we go. Um, and so the file I just sent you is the cookie sales file. And let me know if that link I sent causes like gives you problems, won't let you download or something like that. Um, let's How's that feel? Oh, there we go. That, I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. That feels, oh. There we go. That seems like a good balance between size and space. Okay. Oh, wait a second, y'all. Oh, my goodness. This is not the file I want. I wanted the car sales one, the car inventory one. I'm so sorry. Let me give you that link now. I just copied the wrong one here. Oh my goodness, copyright. There we go. All right, new link in the chat. So the second link there is the car inventory file. That's what we're after. Okay. And again, I'm gonna have to zoom in here. There we go. All right. Here, I'm gonna. There we go. I. What are we looking for? Okay, perfect. So here's a file for us that has a fair bit of data. Um, it's sort of a like a used car dealership type of data. Various cars, make and model, their color, their mileage, price, and cost. So typical information that might be in such a spreadsheet. Um, and we can do all sorts of stuff, just like we talked about in the last class. For this, we could filter it. Click. Are you gonna click? Yeah, I could select it, and we could filter or sort it in various ways, and do all of that sort of manually. Sort. However, a pivot table is really nice because one, it will do a lot of that stuff for us, but two, it'll also organize the data in useful ways that can help us gain insights about the information. Um, so uh, what we're gonna do, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna select any text like in this general data area, just so Excel kind of knows where we're focused. And we're gonna go up to Insert, and there's Pivot Table. I'm just gonna click on it, and it will open a little window, and it should automatically select all of our uh, data. Excel can just, we'll just figure out where your data is. And then it's going to ask us where we want to put the pivot table. For visual simplicity, I'm going to put it on a new worksheet. We could put the pivot table right on the same sheet if we wanted to. But I'm going to put it on a new worksheet. And you'll see down here that it creates a new sheet. And there we go. And we have a pivot table that is absolutely entirely blank. So not super useful for us yet. So what we want to do, our main focus is this pivot table field. So as soon as we insert that pivot table, it brings this up. This is going to allow us to look at our data in all sorts of combinations and all sorts of ways that we can organize it. Notice right here, Excel automatically figured out what the different types of data are. It's just by looking at the headings, the top row. So if your data is laid out kind of funky, it might confuse Excel in terms of this pivot table. But so what we can do, actually, before we do that, before I actually start doing stuff, we have all of the different types of data we have, and then we have these four sort of fields here. Filters, rows, columns, values. These are the different components of the pivot table. So if we, what we can do is we can just drag values. Oh shoot, I was gesturing on my screen share. I'm so sorry. Here are our fields that it got, and then our pivot table options. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag make over to rows, and you'll notice it automatically adjusts our pivot table. So the pivot table is a thing that happens automatically, and you in general don't want to edit it manually. Over here on the sheet itself, you don't want to delete anything, you don't want to move anything around, you don't want to change anything. If you needed to change something, you'd go to where your data source is, and you would change it here. For this stuff, just let Excel adjust it on its own. This is only so useful. However, one thing that's really nice about this is just this alone let us figure out what all of the makes of vehicles we have are. Imagine if we had if our data list, was 1,000, 10,000 cells long, and there were 50 different categories in the make thing. This would let you figure out what they all are instantly. But that's only minorly useful. What are some other things we can do? We can drag model over here and check out what it does. It recognizes, because we put model underneath make, it recognizes that, like Impala, all the Impalas are Chevys, and so it categorizes them under Chevrolet, and then it gives us this little expand collapse icon, so we can collapse all of these. There is actually a pivot table menu up here. Oh, does it not have a collapse all? That's unfortunate. Actually, on the desktop version, I believe right around here you have a collapse all, expand all option. I'm going to collapse all of these for right now. So that's kind of neat. But let's look at some things we can actually do with this. I'm going to drag price over to column. Over to value. Put it in the wrong place. And now, oh, perfect. Okay. What we're seeing, notice I drug price over here, and it changed it to sum of the price. This is displaying as just numbers. We could totally go in here and change these to change it to dollars, just so it looks correct for us. That sort of formatting is totally fine to change on a pivot table. There we go. And notice this menu went away, but as soon as I click on it, it just pops right back up for us. So this is giving us a sum of all of the various makes and or just makes here. But then if I expand these, come on, expand. There we go. It'll give me a sub total for each model, and then a make subtotal as well. So it's just organizing the data automatically for us, which is pretty useful. On the desktop version, how can you adjust the sum from largest to smallest? It's a super good question. Okay, yeah. Let's okay, so we have this. It'd be great to see the largest one at the top and the smallest one at the bottom. What we can do here is if we go to, oops, don't want to drag that away, this sum of price, the thing that's creating the price there, and click this down arrow, value field settings. Oh, well, that's not where I want it to be. Oh, well, it's not doing it the way I wanted it to. That's okay. We can just click on this, and go sort ascending, descending, whatever you want to do. And notice it changed these, it changed all of this around, and now it's in descending. I was thinking there was a menu option over here, but it looks like it's just in our right click menu. So right click on it and sort, and boom, there we go. Um, and then these will stay sorted that way. Let's see. This is just sort of one example of this, of a thing we can do with this. And it's easy enough to just change all of this, drag the values out. Huh, nice. If I just have sum of price and values, it just gives me the total. Which again, kind of nice. Without even having to write a formula, we can get the sum of all of the prices of these. Um, let's um, let's use sort of our filter, and let's use some column stuff over here. Um, we'll do make again. Let's get mileage over here in our filter. Is it automatically gonna? Ah, okay. We would have to do some work with our data. I was really hoping it would automatically categorize these into chunks of about 10,000 or something like that. So instead of filters, we can put it in values. What I would like to do is this going to? No. Okay. Yeah, let's get our colors in there. That's all right. So we have all of our makes. We have the various colors across there. Notice it's not populating any information though. So really all we've told it is I want each of the rows to represent a single make of car. I want the columns to represent a single color of car. So what we can do is then drag color down to values. Oh, it has all of these as dollars. We can change that. This just needs to be numbers in general. And we can get, I'm going to decrease the decimals there because we're using counts. And boom, we have across the whole car inventory, we have a count. How many green Chevys we have, how many you know, black Fords we have, that sort of thing. There's kind of a bunch of stuff you can do with this. It really depends on what sort of data you're trying to surface. But one thing that is kind of neat about this is we can, if I click on this and I go over to insert, so I'm just clicked anywhere in here in general, and I'm going to click a pie graph. Oh, it did it for just black. Ha! That's okay. Hold on a sec. Let me get rid of that. I wanted actually all of this. Actually, you know what I want? I want just the middle stuff. I don't care about the totals. Yeah, let's do just the middle stuff. And now if I go to insert and graph, oops. Ah, why is it doing that to me? Well, earlier I had made one that showed a breakdown of all of the cars across the. Oops. So I want all of these. Oops. That is strange. I'm sorry, y'all. I don't. What I'm trying to show you is that we can make what's called a pivot chart. Let me get rid of. Let me adjust the table here. I want count of color. There we go. Insert. Oh, is it because I have... No, okay. All right. Well, I'll figure that out. I'll show us again maybe on another night. The pivot chart. I don't know why that's not working the way it was earlier. Um, but what's nice about that ultimately is that we can get a chart that will update in real time as we change our pivot table. This is just right now we're just using the sum though, or I guess in this case it's the count. Um, let's get rid of color. Let's do something more interesting here. Um, let's do yeah, let's get mileage in there. Um, so this is showing us it automatically defaulted to sum of mileage, but that's not really useful. We don't really care what the mileage is all added together. What's more useful to us, instead of sum of mileage, so what I did there, clicked on the down arrow, clicked on value field settings, and what we can do is we can go over here and we can change the type of summarization value it's giving us. Right now it's giving us a sum, which makes sense for a lot of things. But what would actually be more useful is if I knew the average. And boom. So our Chevys on average have 119,000 miles. So these are some well-driven Chevys. We could again click here. Click here on the actual value. Sort ascending, and there we go. We can see that our lowest mileage vehicles appear to be our Fords, and see our highest there. The grand total is a little bit of a misnomer here. This is just the average mileage of all of the cars across the inventory. This can get kind of sophisticated, especially if we start doing things like adding more. Oh, notice what happened here. Actually, adding more information to the various parameters of the pivot table. When I dragged model over here, I put it on top of make, so it's grouping them by the model and then subcategorizing the make, which is not really what we want. So we can adjust that by just dragging that down, which tells us that the order of these matters. The top, it's just a hierarchy of categorization is all it ends up being. But I could drop this down and see specifically what my mileage averages are for each model of vehicle in addition. Click. There we go. I would like to show you that pivot chart. I was excited about showing you all that. Give me 1 second on it. I want to try to, excuse me, see if it is the data over here. So I'm gonna. There we go. Okay. We're going to take that out. Take that out. Color and put. Yeah, again, it did it again, even if I change the data. Okay, well, all right. I guess I'm just gonna give up on that for tonight, and I'll demonstrate it on another night. One thing I did want to show, though, let me close this over here, is we haven't really made use of this filters yet, this filters parameter. Let's get rid of count to colors. I'm going to drag my colors up here to my filters. And so what we can do, why don't we do, why don't we put cost in there? And so what this does is it, anything in the filters, it just adds a drop-down menu. Well, I guess it opens it up in a window where we can just cut across the data based on certain criteria. So if I only cared about my white, blue, and green cars, I can select that, and it will just adjust the data accordingly. One thing I can see that might be useful for something like mileage as well, if we wanted to only look at cars with certain mileage. So instead of filter, I'm going to take colors out of filter. I'm going to drag my mileage over there. Here's the downside. Because it's literally just taking these values. Actually, let me try something here. I'm gonna take our mileage, and I'm gonna see if it recognizes this. This is just a number. I'm wondering if it was just seeing it as text and not as a number. So let's get rid of mileage. Oh, you know what? No. Let's put it right there, filter. Darn. Okay, so what we would need to do if we wanted to be able to filter by, say, more than 50,000, less than 50,000, something like that, is we would need to go over to our data, and we could just add a another column that is like high mileage, something like that. So this is just going to be a simple case. This is just going to be a binary. Is it a high mileage car? Is it not a high mileage car? We get to define what that is, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go equals. I'm going to do if. I'm going to do an if statement here. If E2, which is the mileage cell here, if E2 is greater than 100,000 there, then this is going to be true, and if it's not, it's going to be false. I'm going to close that, and boom, false, not over. And now what we can do is just copy that and paste it down for the rest of our data, and boom, we've added a but what we need to do, notice that hasn't appeared on our pivot table here. It's because what we need, there we go, change data source on our pivot table. We need to add in, we need this to go over to column H. So right here where it ends at column G, oops, there we go. Sorry, y'all, I jumped to that other, I hit escape on accident. Pivot table, change data source, there we go. Right here, where it says G, I'm going to change it to H. And now, when we click on this and pivot table, settings, there we go, that's what we're looking for. Oh, field list, not settings. There we go, high mileage is on here. And now, so I'm going to take out the mileage, and do high mileage. And now, I just did this in a really simple way, just a true or false, but we could actually set up different categories and stuff like that. And I can change it so high mileage false, I only want low mileage vehicles. And then here's the sum. I have it of cost, but we could totally just do under values if we just put make. It'll do count. It'll tell us how many low mileage Chevys, how many low mileage Nissans, and so forth. Um, and so with these pivot tables, you can set up a number of pivot tables on the same sheet, on different sheets that all sort of do different tasks. Or you can just have a single pivot table that you adjust accordingly based on your current needs. Um, that's more of a specific use case where it really just depends on what makes sense for your workflow. Um, there are a couple other little things I wanted to show. Um, if we click on this, so these down arrows um, give you options to sort this however you want to sort it. There's a filter option in here, which will let you just choose to disclude or exclude um, certain categories, even though they show up in the data. It'll just automatically hide them. Over here, is it this one? No. Oh, it's this option right here. So if you're in the pivot table ribbon up here, um, notice there's a couple of buttons over here that sort of change what this panel is. That's because these are both highlighted. If I turn off field list, that goes away. So if you're missing this options panel, it's probably because your settings button needs to be clicked. But right here, you can change the name of the pivot table, which isn't super important unless you're having a lot of pivot tables. That can help you sort of sort through them more quickly. These grand totals, there were certain things that it didn't really make sense to have a grand total of, like say the mileage or something. And so if you just want to get rid of that, you can unclick or I guess this is there you go, yeah, and then boom, we get rid of that grand total row. Some of these things are going to be, most of the time, this layout is going to be grayed out because it's going to be doing a lot of stuff automatically for you. But then, yeah, just various settings for the pivot table. Save source data with file. Especially if the data you're pulling from, it has a lot of rows, I'm talking like 1,000 plus, you may notice that your pivot table doesn't update automatically. And so click this refresh data on file open, and if you close and open the file, it'll refresh your pivot table. Honestly, and 1,000 is kind of low. If you're pushing like 10,000, maybe more than that, that's when it's going to start to sometimes not update automatically, just because it has to do a ton of calculations. So it's going to wait until you tell it to update. Yeah. Based on this data set, or not based on this data set, is there that's sort of our jump into pivot tables, what they are, how to mess with the different pieces. Is there some way you'd like to particularly see this data manipulated? Yes. Right. Oh, like before you, yeah. Um, So when you say you're deleting columns and stuff, are you deleting them? You're deleting them from your data yourself, or is you're having empty columns show up on your in your pivot table itself? Hmm. Hmm. I mean, yeah. So yeah, to answer that specific question, absolutely. Um, yeah. Um, and then when you're pasting and putting into a new spreadsheet, um, I imagine it's just pasting the values because the way a pivot table works is this information uh, is being placed here by sort of algorithms behind the scenes of within Excel, right? Like this data doesn't actually exist here; it exists over here, wherever the data source is. Um, and so, one thing I recommend that tends to make this a lot easier, there's a balance here, is if you can quickly and easily clean up the data, I recommend doing that initially. So if there's redundant or extraneous columns like fields actually in your data source, get rid of those there because they're just going to clutter up your pivot table fields. Um, However, sometimes part of the reason you're making a pivot table is because there's just so much information in your data source, right? That even going through to clean it up would be sort of a project unto itself. And if that's the case, one thing you can do is you can actually use the pivot table to clean up the data. So you can, especially if you have like redundant fields or columns, you can go in here and tell it, oh no, I want, basically, when we look at this, we're just getting sort of a subset and in some ways a summary of our data, right? And so what can be really nice is to then use this and, like you're saying, copy and paste it into a different, into another Excel file, and then now you have a cleaner data source that you could then potentially make another pivot table out of that will be a cleaner pivot table. So we can use these as a data, or when I say these, we can use pivot tables as a data processing tool, not just like a data summarization tool. Um, does that answer the question? I want to make sure. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's a good question. So because like here, for example, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do where is my home formula? Oh, conditional formatting. That's what I'm looking for. So really quick, I'm just going to um, you're talking about fails. I'm just going to highlight all the accord cells. Ba, ba, ba. Highlight cells with uh, specific text containing, um, oops, accord. Okay, I'm going to do done. So cool. We can see accord. Apparently, there's only the three, but it's highlighted here, right? Uh, the pivot table itself, though, So let me go, get rid of high mileage, get rid of count of make. Let's go. No, wait, it didn't get rid of it. There you go. And then let's go model. We'll just put it there. It doesn't really matter where we put it. Um, oh, and then I hid my Hondas. uh, but notice, so a chord here, but it's not highlighted anymore. So the pivot table is not aware of any formatting of actually even data type. So remember when I pulled over price, or cost, whichever it was, I pulled over. It didn't treat it as if it was numbers, even though they are formatted as numbers over here. So yeah, once you make your pivot table, and that's part of that's one of the things we use pivot tables for, is to take messy data and make it more human readable. Um, Once you have your information in the data table, uh, more or less looking the way you want, from there we could then go in and do sort of a oops, go right there, and I'll just do a new formatting rule. Cell value, oops, not cell value, specific text, and I'll do a chord again, and I have to reapply that rule, but there it is. And so you could do that with all of the, say, the fail conditions that you were talking about. Um, but yeah, you would do it. You would do that sort of processing after you've created the pivot table. That's all right. So yeah, um, it's mostly a formatting thing. But yeah, the merging and centering. So yeah, this sounds like it might be especially particular with like the data you're looking at, and you and I could. Um, and so mhm. Yeah, let's look at get rid of this because it's bothering me. Um, so what we could do, and let's actually add, this is my caps lock on. Um, Redundant, extraneous. Right, we have all of this stuff. Um, we can imagine, so let's. Oops. Are you gonna let me drag you? No, you're not gonna let me drag you. Okay, fine. Um, let's see. I want to. When I copy this, I just want to put it sort of in the middle here. We're gonna insert column. I'm, I'm gonna paste it. Paste. Paste. Go in there. There we go. Um, Man, this is Excel is going slow for me for some reason. Okay, so we have like our price and our cost, and maybe we have some sort of extraneous or redundant data in here. And so what um, the centering part of the merge and center is mostly just a style thing, but merge and center is literally just a button right here. And what that's going to do, so it's popping up this warning to me because it notices that if I merge things, I'm going to lose some information. Merging cells only keeps the upper left value and discards other values. So if you're merging more than left right, if you're merging like a whole range together. Um, oh, actually, you know what? I see what it's doing. Here, we want to merge these. Um, Merge and center. There we go. So all it does is it makes these two, what were two cells like these are, it turns it into a single cell. And so yeah, and so if if this G column is basically also the price, well then we don't need to have two cells that both say 4,000, we need this 4,000 to apply to both of these headings, right? Um, and then what we should be able to do, if I drag this down, nope, it changed the data on me. So what we can do, I'm going to copy this, Control C, and now I'm going to go down, select all of this data, select all of this data, right click, and in my paste options, I'm going to go to paste formatting. So merging is a formatting option. I'm going to paste that formatting, and boom, it just merges all of them. When I had them all highlighted, so just to show you, when I had them all highlighted, right, I was like, oh, I just want to merge this left, right, and click merge. It popped up this morning because watch what's going to happen. It took price because it merged, and now look, this is one big giant cell. It literally merged all of those into a single cell that can only contain one piece of information. So I'm going to Control Z that to get rid of it. Let's see. Merge and center, merge across. If I do that, will it do it? Heck yeah. Okay, cool. So instead of having to copy and paste, I'm missing one, but that's okay. If you drop down your merge and center, there's a merge across, which it understands that oftentimes you want to merge a whole column with another whole column. It's going to give me a warning, but then when I do that, boom, it just merges them all at the same time. Including, because I had this up here highlighted, it got rid of the heading for this redundant column. So if you didn't want to do that, you could obviously just not highlight the heading column and then merge it across. And there we go. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can unmerge it. So what are you trying to accomplish by merging it? This is just all. This is just in the steps of things. Nice. I'm glad. Okay. Because the other thing that occurs to me is if column G here is completely redundant, and if you're just going to overwrite anything in this column anyway, you could just delete the column, and it seems like you would accomplish the same thing. Okay. Hmm. So, and that's no, that's totally okay. And one thing I might, we could do. I'm open to just different ways that we could do this. Is I can understand, especially if you're doing stuff if you all are doing stuff for like work and things like that. You don't want to just like share your screen with this like work data. Um, but we might be able to instead set up one or two of the class meetings. Uh, since there's only three tonight, four total, but that fourth person never showed up, so I don't know if they're going to show up at all. Um, since there's only three of us, I could just chunk it out, and we could have some like one-on-ones, and I can actually help you with the very specific things you're trying to accomplish. Which seems like it could be really valuable. It's not something I could do if this was like a class of eight, like last time. Um, good. I'm glad. Yeah, yeah, and just the nature of Excel is that everybody's trying to do a very specific thing with it, right? No, almost nobody, a few of us, but almost nobody just uses Excel for fun. and so, and that's really what I want to focus on. Uh, what I wanted to focus on overall, just in teaching Excel, is in my experience, one of the main things I've done for different companies I've worked for and stuff is I've come in and I've just been the person who knows how Excel works, and so I can just automate out a bunch of tedious, repetitive stuff, or I can, use a pivot table because I had a company I worked for that was had a data, and they would go through by hand. They would have like a sticky note, and they for like the car thing, they go, okay, there's one black, there's another black, right? And it's just like, no, Excel can do a lot of this stuff automatically for us. Um, and that's really the power, is figuring out how to get Excel to do the things that are important in your day to day specifically. Um, mhm. um, Taylor, you also mentioned pivot tables. Uh, uh, how has this initial stuff felt with pivot tables? Um, is there specific things you're needing to accomplish with pivot tables? Specific types of data you're trying to um, what would you say, like sift out? Okay, this is helping. I am glad. Um, man, I am very annoyed at the pivot chart um, not cooperating. I do this before the classes. I go through like the sheet, and then I just delete all the stuff I do. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do this again during class probably, so I just delete it all. Uh, a lot of numbers that I have to use a pivot table to organize the data. Yeah, that's exactly what the um, cool. Yeah. So Taylor, as we're talking about this stuff, if there's some thing that you'd like to see me do with the pivot table, or anything that we're doing, you're like, can you get it to do this type of thing, which is the thing I need to do? Just let me know. I'm trying to keep my eye on chat um, for anything that anybody might pop in there. Um, so yeah, I'll get that pivot chart working for next time, because it's really useful. It's so nice to be able to easily make a chart. And what's nice about the pivot chart is, just like the pivot table, how this table will automatically adjust simply based on what's in here. Um, the chart will also automatically adjust based on the fields you move around. So the chart will always sort of summarize the table, but for some reason it was getting fixated on that one field. Um, yeah, I'll troubleshoot that, and then I'll share with you all how I fixed it, because I think that's also a really useful thing for something like this, is how do you go about troubleshooting and bug fixing, basically. Um, and the answer is, I'm probably going to Google it, but then I'll share with you what I figure out. Um, cool. What was the other? All right. I do have a more complicated file. Um, so it was actually that cookie sales one that we could use for some pivot table uh, content as well. But I think I'm going to wait until I can get the pivot chart working, because that one's a really good example for the pivot chart. Um, and then the other thing is, so some of you either, you know, Diana, you might just receive your pivot tables, or you might already know exactly what needs to go in these various fields. Um, but if you're using, if you have your own data and you're trying to sort of get a handle on it or something like that, um, just like I said before, the easiest way to sort of get to know how this sort of stuff works is kind of just to play with it. Uh, what happens if we put um, the high mileage in the values column there, right? Oh, it goes to count of high mileage. Um, and it's sort of defaulting to this count. Excel's doing a lot of stuff for us here. Um, but then there's various options here. It'll move as we go there. Ooh, um, nice. So this, actually here, let me get rid of this and show you what I did there. Um, on our pivot table ribbon, there is right here, there's an insert slicer button, a big old button, but also on each of our fields, if you click the arrow, you can just click Add as Slicer. And what that does is it pops up this nice little interface looking thing. And right now I have false selected. So this is a count of all of the vehicles whose high mileage field is false. I can click true and switch it over. And now it switches it over. And switch to this multi-select, and I can select both. And so it just gives us a little visual interactive thing rather than the pivot table sort of settings panel, right? So especially if you're trying to make a pivot table so that data is easier to interact with, this can be a really these slicers can be a really nice sort of tool, and it's just like a little window that you can just put wherever you want. If you don't want it anymore, you can also adjust the size, which is nice. And if you don't want it anymore, you just click on it. Click on it so you get the little selection box, and hit delete, and it's gone. I don't think the mileage was a great demonstration of that, but the price. Do added slicer. Is it going to give me all the different prices? It is. Okay, so this is something I'm going to make a note of as well for us to talk about. Is this isn't super useful, right? All of the specific prices, because each of these specific prices probably corresponds to exactly one vehicle. Maybe there's two vehicles that happen to be exactly $2,000 or something like that. So what I'm going to get set up for us for next time is, and that we can talk about, is how do we get the pivot table to, what's the word? To deal with ranges of numbers. That's what I'm trying to say. So instead of these prices, these very, very specific prices, how do I get a box that says 2,000 to 3,000, 3,000 to 4,000, that sort of thing? Because that could be a really good way to categorize the data as well, to have these ranges of values. So I am going to go, oops, not there. I already have it open over here. I'm going to add that to my notes for something for us to go over next time. And then in between our class meetings, if something occurs to you that you want to make sure we cover in the next session or one of the next sessions or something like that, just shoot me an email, and I will add it to my notes. If you shoot me the email Tuesday morning, I may not have a chance to put it in for that night's class, but I'll definitely put it in for the next night's class. Yeah, that's sort of my overview of these pivot tables. As usual, my night one is a little bit short, just as I sort of get in here and get chatting with you all. But I feel like I have good notes for night two. Since we definitely still have some time, is there anything else any of you were really hoping to get out of night one? Oh, let me pull up my chat. There we go. Okay. Well, then I'm going to assume everybody is pretty satisfied. And I might just call it and have us end fairly early, but I can't imagine anybody's upset to have more of their evening. And we'll come back next Tuesday and just dive even deeper into some of the pivot table stuff and any additional content. Jim, I'm going to look into what you were talking about, and I hope to have a couple of solution options for you. Um, and then we can sort of discuss pros and cons of each of those. Yes, I saw that you emailed me, so I will check that. Um, I'll look at that, and then we can just sort of dive in. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So we have three more meetings, 6 more hours. So I think plenty of time to cover everything everybody needs. Of course, absolutely. Glad you all are here for Excel 2, and I will just plan to see you next week. Oh, you're welcome, Jib. Yeah, absolutely.